Have you been thinking about Colorado, or has Colorado been calling your name? Well, we are going to be diving into the 10 most crucial things you need to know about moving to Colorado before you take that plunge. Number 1 is gonna surprise you. All right, we're going to dive right into it. Number 10, altitude. So Denver is known as the Mile High City, sitting at an altitude of 5,280 feet. And it gets even higher from there, with some of our ski resorts like Breckenridge with peaks over 10,000 feet where you're skiing. So what does that mean for you? Well, it means a couple of things. So if you are from somewhere that is a lower elevation or down at sea level, you are absolutely going to feel more fatigued, you're going to get dehydrated, and you might even experience some headaches. But don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. You can definitely acclimate to this environment. It's going to take you, depending on how healthy you are, a couple of days to a couple of weeks or even a couple of months. But eventually you will fully acclimate to the Colorado altitude, and it will actually become something of an advantage. And let me tell you why. So because of that lower amount of oxygen that's naturally in the air, just because of the elevation, your body is going to compensate by producing a little bit more red blood cells, and you're going to be able to use what you have a lot more efficiently. So if you're someone who does athletics or anything like that, when you go visit your family back down at sea level, you are going to perform a heck of a lot better than you remember performing here in Denver. So if you go out for that morning jog, you're going to feel like $1,000,000 when you're back down at sea level. But it is a real thing. And now there's some things you can do to help alleviate this or prevent it. The first thing is staying super hydrated. Second is just being aware of it. So if you are coming from sea level and you decide, hey, let's go check out the mountains, well, as you're climbing that 14er, just make sure that you feel up to it and you know what your body is telling you. If you start to get dizzy or lightheaded, just knock it off, take a break, get yourself some water, and go from there. Altitude sickness is a real thing. It doesn't have to be a serious thing as long as you're taking care of yourself. In fact, at a lot of the gas stations up in the mountains, or even here in Denver, they sell these little cans of, I think it's called O2 Boost or Oxygen Boost or something. And it's basically a paint can looking thing with a gas mask on the front where you can take a hit of oxygen to make yourself feel a little better. But the altitude is a real thing, so just be prepared for it, and just know that the first few days you're here, you might not feel great, but once you start moving around and getting used to it, it'll become second nature. Okay, so before we start the next one, I just want to remind you guys that if you love Colorado as much as I do and you want to make it home, hit me up on my website right here or give me a call. I'm a licensed realtor here in the state, and as much as I like making these videos, I love getting people into great Colorado houses too. So without any more delay, let's get right back to the list. All right, number 9, the cost of living here in Colorado is definitely something that you're going to be needing to be aware of. Now, that goes for everything cost of living. Right now, the median home price in Colorado is $560,000 compared to the national average of around $400,000 for a median home price. Now that is a median home price. We're seeing an average home purchase in the Denver metro area upwards to around $710,000 right now. So just be prepared for some very expensive housing prices. We're not the most expensive in the nation, but it's definitely creeping in that direction. Now, secondly, with the high cost of housing comes the high cost of everything else. That's just kind of how that economy works. So overall, groceries are going to be a little bit more expensive, fuel is going to be a little bit more expensive, and just everything that you do is on average going to be a few percent higher than if you were in another state that overall the cost of living was a little bit lower. Now, rental prices, for example, right now for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment somewhere in the Denver metro area, you're looking at around $1,800. But most people are going to need more than that 1-room apartment, so you're more likely looking at $2,500 or higher for an average apartment rental rate. Now, it just goes up from there depending on how big it is, but realistically, if you're either trying to buy a home for under $500,000, you're probably going to be looking at a fixer-upper or a townhome or a condo. And if you're looking at a place to rent, if you have anything less than a $2,500 budget, it's probably going to be a much older, less desirable type of apartment complex or a very small unit. So just be prepared so you don't have sticker shock when you start your search. Now, what's the saving grace? Well, the saving grace on all of this is Colorado has some of the lowest property tax in the nation. We're getting everywhere else, but at least your tax bill isn't going to be as high overall, at least on property tax, as it might be somewhere else in the country. Number 8, the weather. Now, Colorado is famous for its erratic weather patterns, if you will, but it is something that you're going to get used to and you're going to love. Now, if you've lived anywhere in the country, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, hey, you don't like the weather, give it 10 minutes, it's going to change. Here in Colorado, that couldn't be any more true. It is an absolute reality. The weather changes here extremely fast. Now, the good news is that means that if it's a bad weather day or a cold day or a hot day, chances are that the next day is going to be something really nice. In fact, just recently here, we had a huge swing in temperature. It was about 70 degrees on Thursday, and then by Friday afternoon, it was snowing, and then Saturday morning, it was in the negatives, around negative 13, 14 degrees. So we had a gigantic switch in just a matter of a couple of days, and that is typical Colorado. Really nice t-shirt weather, followed by an Arctic blast. But the nice thing is at least on the Denver Front Range, the winters are fairly mild. We do get some snow, and sometimes it's pretty significant snow, but for the most part, if it snows on a Monday, by Tuesday midday, that snow is melted and you're back to dry roads, or at least wet roads, getting back into it. Summers are kind of the same way. Occasionally it's going to get pretty hot, but for the most part, you can expect somewhere between upper 70s to mid 80s, a few days in the 90s. The weather is really nice most of the year. And Colorado does have 4 true seasons, which is also really nice. So you get to experience the full range of the seasonal cycle, which is something amazing. If you're not familiar, which I don't know how you wouldn't, the Colorado fall is some of the most spectacular colors you're going to find in the nation. Only rivaled by somewhere like Acadia National Park up in Maine, or down on the Blue Mountain or Blue Ridge Parkway down in the Appalachia area. But the aspen trees are beautiful here, and it's one of the just absolute keystone reasons that you're going to love living here in Colorado. But that being said, the weather does change super fast. So for example, if you go out on a hike in the summertime and you're up in the mountains, you need to be prepared at all times for a thunderstorm to roll in unexpectedly and hit you. With that, you're probably going to want a poncho, and you also need to be prepared for hail. Colorado gets a ton of it, and it's usually unexpected. The weather is always changing, it's super fast, and you just need to be prepared. So if you're not a fan of rapidly changing weather, Colorado might not be good for you. But if you like 300 plus days of sunshine a year, which is what Colorado gets on average, it might actually be a perfect setup for you. Teach their own, but the weather changes here rapidly. Overall pretty mild, but we get full swings in every direction. Number 7, the community vibe. Now, Colorado has got its own Colorado vibe to it, and I'm sure if you've run into anyone from the state, you kind of get that feel. Now, Coloradans are known for being overall pretty laid back, relatively friendly, and extremely health conscious. In fact, Colorado is one of the healthiest states in the United States, which is something that I'm fairly proud of. Now, places like Boulder and Boulder County are going to be much more laid back and have a little bit of that hippie vibe, which they're known for, while other places like Colorado Springs are going to be a little bit more conservative and traditional, but overall you're still going to find that folks are pretty laid back and overall friendly. Now, Denver is going to be your overall urban setting, so if you like that urban feel and that big city, Denver and downtown is kind of where you're going to get that. Now, Denver, although a big area geographically, is still not going to provide the same downtown feeling that you're going to get in the major cities like Chicago or New York or Los Angeles, but it's big enough that you definitely get that urban feel, the skyscrapers, and the downtown feeling in general. It's just not quite on the same scale as some of the larger cities in the nation. Now, if you're looking for a college town vibe, Fort Collins, Colorado, or Boulder, Colorado both have you set. So Fort Collins is home to Colorado State University, and it has got a absolute college vibe from start to finish. It is its own thing, and the fun thing is the college vibe that you get in Fort Collins is different than the college vibe you're going to get in Boulder. Either way, you can't lose. You're going to have all of those little niche hole-in-the-wall restaurants, dive bars, the whole 9 yards, plus the great sports athletic teams and everything that's going on with College Town. A lot of fun in both places, so definitely check out Fort Collins or Boulder if you're looking for that college vibe. Now, Colorado Springs does have a few colleges. The biggest one that is known down there is the United States Air Force Academy. Now, that has a completely different vibe, but it is open to the public in a lot of areas, so you should definitely check it out because the Air Force Academy is really a pretty cool place to visit, and it's definitely something that you should see because the future leaders of the Air Force are definitely down there. Moving on to number 6. Love of the outdoor activities. Now, if you are someone who loves to be doing things that aren't outdoors, then Colorado is really not the best place for you. Colorado is renowned for all of its outdoor activities, both summer and winter. Now in the summertime, we have some of the best hiking trails, mountain biking paths, rock climbing, and river rafting that you're gonna find in the nation. On any given day, you're gonna see people out on their bikes, out running, walking their dogs, doing all sorts of outdoor things. And the amount of kayaks that you see on top of cars or boats being pulled is kind of comical. In fact, up US 285, which is one of the ways that goes into the mountains that's not the major highway I-70, we always joke that Friday afternoon through Saturday evening is the weekend RV and boat show, because so many people are heading up into the mountains to go hit those mountain reservoirs or go camping. So if you're not an outdoorsy person, I mean, you'll still probably like it here, but you're really missing out on one of the most just well-renowned draws to Colorado, which is all of the outdoor recreation. Now, on top of that, Colorado boasts some of the best ski resorts in the world. Yes, I said that, in the world. Yeah, if you don't agree with me, come fight me on that one. But we have some of the best resorts in the world. Everything from Breckenridge, Winter Park, Vail, Beaver Creek, Steamboat, Monarch, Arapahoe Basin, Loveland. We've got tons of them. Even Eldora, right outside of Boulder, Colorado. There's so many ski resorts and great places, and each one has their own feel, and they're amazing. I mean, depending on whether you're a snowboarder, a skier, or if you don't like either and you just want to go tubing, Winter Park in Fraser, Colorado has got you covered there too. So it is a great spot. And if you ever make it up to Steamboat, Colorado, Steamboat Springs, you're going to want to check out the ski jumps, because in Steamboat, that is one of the places where we train our Olympic skiers to do their jumping, and more Olympic athletes have come out of that town for that event than anywhere else in the nation. It's pretty cool little claim to fame. But with Colorado's 300 plus days of sun that I mentioned earlier, doesn't matter what time of year it is, you're going to be able to find something good to do outside, and it's a great place to enjoy. Don't sleep on that. If you are an outdoor person, you're going to love it. If you're an indoor person, you're missing out, but you'll still probably like it here because it's Colorado, and what's not to like? Number 5, driving in Colorado. So one question that we get all the time is, hey, I'm moving to Colorado. Do I really need a 4-wheel drive car? Well, that kind of depends, but the answer is yes, absolutely. You definitely need a 4-wheel drive car. I say that as someone who owned a essentially 2-wheel drive Ford Ranger for the first half of my driving career here in Colorado. That was enough to tell me that I knew where I couldn't go, which is a lot of places, and you absolutely want a 4-wheel drive car here in Colorado. So even though I keep mentioning those 300 days of sunshine and the mild winters, when the roads get bad here, they get really bad. And at this point, the snowplows just plain don't keep up with it. So you definitely need good tires and you need a good car, because the last thing you want to do is being part of that summer tire party in a ditch on the side of the road because you didn't have the right equipment. Now, if you're heading into the mountains, 100% you need a 4-wheel drive car and good tires and potentially chains depending on where you're going. But most importantly, you also need to get some practice and know what you're doing out there. I'd say 90% of the crashes that I see are just because people who don't know or aren't comfortable driving their vehicles on windy mountain roads in slick conditions, and they end up in the ditch because they just either were going too fast or didn't know how to control their car when it starts to slide. So not a lot of classes you can take for that, but get out there and get some practice, and definitely you're going to want a 4-wheel drive car. Now, the other thing getting around here in Colorado, we're getting better, but our mass transit system is fairly limited to kind of the hub and spoke of Denver. So if you're too far out of town, you're not really going to get the service that you're wanting as far as light rail, commuter rail, or bus service. Not the most walkable of places in a lot of spots. If you are downtown or in one of the areas that the light rail or commuter rail services, it can get you all over the place within that system, but it does have limitations. It basically stops kind of a little bit north of town and all the way down into the Lone Tree area, more or less. But if you're trying to get to Boulder or up to Longmont or Loveland or down to Colorado Springs, you're going to be a little bit out of luck public transit wise. So a car is definitely a must. Our highways are definitely crowded, and they're getting a little bit worse with every new development that's coming in. The infrastructure is just not keeping up. But honestly, I can't think of a major US city that doesn't have a similar problem. We just need to redesign our highway system in America overall. Now, the one cool thing is, in the winter, something that tries to alleviate some of that traffic on I-70 is the Amtrak Winter Park Express. We used to have something called the Denver Ski Train, which would would go from Union Station to Winter Park, and it went away a number of years ago. But recently, a few years ago, Amtrak partnered with the city and brought it back. So you get on the train in Union Station at Denver, Colorado, and then it takes you up to Winter Park. The train drops you off literally 100 yards away from the ski lift. You bring your skis, your snowboards, you get off the train, you go ski all day, come back, hop on the platform, load your skis up, and come right back down into Denver at the end of the day. Super convenient, and it's a beautiful ride up. So give that a try. Number 4, the job market. So let's talk about Colorado's job market. Colorado has got a robust job market, and it's excelling right now in aerospace tech, space tech, and technology in general. Now, Boulder, Colorado is kind of renowned for being a startup capital of the state. There's a ton of startup companies in Boulder, Colorado, which really gives a lot of opportunity. You have in Denver a much more traditional layout of all of the normal corporate jobs and things like that. But if you're looking for military contract or government work or something like that, Colorado Springs in that area hosts a ton of military bases. And so there is just boundless opportunities for government work, government jobs, government contract work, Department of Defense, all sorts of stuff. But overall, the job market here in Colorado is fairly strong. Now, with that, the state's unemployment rate on average is usually a little bit lower than the rest of the country. So that's a pretty good thing overall if you're looking at Colorado due to work factors. The downside to all of this is competition is pretty fierce, especially for some of those top tier and tech jobs. If you're trying to move here, it might be a good idea to go ahead and secure that interview, or at least get a preemptive offer letter before you make that move, because I've seen a lot of people coming out here trying to get jobs and they end up working somewhere, but not necessarily what their plan A was, because the market is super, super competitive. Number 3, the marijuana and cannabis laws. Everybody knows Colorado at this point as the cannabis state. We are one of the first to recognize both recreational and healthcare purpose cannabis and weed. And from that, the marijuana business and cannabis business has had a thriving success here in Colorado. It has been legal in the state since 2012, and the infrastructure and overall business environment for it has been growing ever since. Now, although public consumption still remains illegal, you have to be doing it in your own private residence, there's evidence of it all over the place. You can smell it in all sorts of places. So if that is something that bothers you, relatively open cannabis use, you may want to consider where in Colorado that you want to be, because there's some places that have much more liberal populations when it comes to usage, areas that have a much more conservative outlook on usage. So depending on where those spots are, which you'll need to research a little bit, cannabis is very prevalent here in general. Recreational tourism has become a major factor in Colorado's economy. There's been a ton of states that still say no, absolutely not, on multiple levels, whether it's recreational or for medical purposes, and that has grown a whole new industry in Colorado, which is cannabis tourism. It's a unique spot where Colorado has been able to capitalize on this, and then they turn around and take a good portion of those proceeds via taxes and put it back into the community via school projects and parks and things like that. So Colorado is definitely bringing in a ton of money through the cannabis industry, and it's something that has just continued to grow since its adoption in 2012. Number 2. So this might be something that if you're not aware of, you need to be aware of. Now, Colorado is known for its natural disasters of wildfires and hail. Now, the wildfires, there's a chance that you've probably seen somewhere on the news about a wildfire in Colorado. And depending on where you're at, you may have even been able to experience some hazy days or smoke-filled days because of the fires in Colorado. Now, this is a very, very real risk and a very real reality for a lot of us who live here on the Front Range. Now, the fires are getting bigger, it seems like, every season, because we've just had a perpetual drought for years and years and years, and it's just making things worse and worse and worse. So the two things to be aware of here is, depending on where you live is going to determine a little bit of how susceptible you are to that wildfire risk. Now, I have sold and personally lived up in the mountains. You're gonna be at a higher risk in the mountains. That's just how it is. You're living in a forest, and that forest right now is very dry. That doesn't mean you're out of the woods though if you live down on the plains, because just a couple of years ago, the Marshall Fire, which was near Boulder, got started and then ran east because of some 100-mile-an-hour winds winds basically erased an entire town. Now, this is something that we're seeing right now in Los Angeles, and we see out in California from time to time. Colorado is absolutely not immune to it. Now, that doesn't mean I'm trying to scare you away because of wildfire, because you can get wildfires anywhere. I mean, I lived in Nebraska for a number of years, and some of the fires that whipped through some of those open fields moved faster, burned hotter, and caused just as much damage as other places. The only saving grace is in a lot of those cases, there wasn't structures on that big farmland that burned up, but fires happen everywhere. You can be prepared, and you can try to get your house and your property set up to be fire safe by keeping vegetation away and things like that. But overall, it's just something you need to be aware of. And also, more importantly, depending on where you're at, you need to certainly check what your insurance company that you're trying to get a quote from is going to cover and what it isn't. We're seeing a lot of people having trouble getting insurance because of wildfire danger. The second one, which is also kind of becoming an insurance issue, is hail. Colorado gets more hail than anywhere else. Now, most of the time, it's just that little pea gravel type stuff. Now, most of the time, it's just that little pea-sized hail, which doesn't do much damage. But every once in a while, we're going to get a storm or two, probably once every couple of years, where you're getting golf ball and baseball size hail, and it's just going to destroy an entire neighborhood's worth of roofs, windshields, cars, all that stuff. And in fact, we just recently had one roll through in 2023. The good news is it got me a brand new roof here on my shop and on my house. But the bad news is it made everybody's insurance rates go up because of that storm. But hail and wildfire are the two biggest risks when it comes to living in Colorado as far as natural disaster. Now, again, don't let that scare you away. There's plenty of space here in Colorado, and their chances are that you're going to be affected by one of these is relatively low in the big scheme of things. And even if you live somewhere else, you're at that same risk for either wildfire, hail, or something else, whether it's tornado, flood, big thunderstorms, hurricanes, typhoons. You know, the whole gambit of natural disasters. We all have them. And in fact, I don't think there's anywhere in the country that you're truly safe from any of that. But here in Colorado, we get fire and we get hail. Number one, what you need to know about moving to Colorado. It's the lifestyle that you want. Now, if you're someone who's even watching this video and you made it this far, then you probably already know this. Colorado has the lifestyle that you want. It has a unique blend of both urban and outdoor activities, world-class outdoor activities, whether it's mountain biking, skiing, paragliding, rafting, or the ski resorts that everybody knows about and are world famous. Now, if you're into music, Colorado's got you covered there. Red Rocks Amphitheater is one of the best and most well-known places for a band to play, and it's often on their bucket list to get to perform there. The concert season is amazing at Red Rocks, and if you've never checked out a concert in this type of environment, then you have to go. Whether you live in Colorado or not, get a plane ticket, figure out the schedule, and go watch a show at Red Rocks. It's unlike anything that you have ever seen, and hands down, it makes a stadium tour just look like child's play. It's the coolest thing ever. Now, seasonal activities are amazing as well, whether it's going leaf looking up in the mountains, going for skiing up in the winter, or snowboarding, catching a dog sled, or enjoying the summer and getting out on that reservoir and catching some fish. Whatever you want to do, Colorado has got you covered. We also have an amazing world-class art center, art museum, center for performing arts, the whole gambit of everything. Overall, if you're thinking about it and you've made it to this video, then by all means, Colorado is the place for you, and you absolutely should give it a try. Now, if you're considering about moving to Colorado, or you want to ask some questions or get more information, hit me up. My phone number is right here, or my website right there. I'd be happy to help you out. Until next time, enjoy your life wherever you're at, or right here in Colorado.